Okay, so now that you combined the modules, the next thing we're going to do here is just start out by selecting some of the joints that we're going to skin to. Um, I was for a while tempted to just make this into a game rig, and what I would do now is just basically recreate all the joints and constrain them to each other, and then the ones that I was scaling, I would scale constrain that to them. That way we would have a hierarchy that was basically following this character, and being constrained, those joints would be moving the skinning of the character. But I think for simplicity, and because I didn't mention before that this is a game, or this could have been a game rig, we're just gonna go make it a regular rig. And then maybe I'm gonna make a different kind of video where I'm gonna upgrade him to become an Unreal rig. Also, some things that we're gonna do later on in an upgrade video later on is gonna make some finger controls for him. Maybe some tongue control. But for now, we're just gonna focus on getting the things nailed down that we don't know how to do, because by now you know how to create both an IK and FK setup, so you could use that for the tongue, or you can use just some basic FKs for the fingers, and that's basically what you would have to do, and I'll do a video on that. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna just quickly tag all my joints. I'm gonna name all the joints. I'm just not gonna use tagging. I'm just gonna name all the joints that I want to skin to. And the way I'm gonna do it is I'm just gonna suffix everything with underscore skin and then underscore JNT, and that way I can pick them up with my select by name tool here, and that way I'll know which joints I'm using for skinning. So the first thing I'm going to do here is just start out by selecting my first leg here. And in my leg, I know I'm not going to skin to my spring solver, because the spring solver is basically the leg that's moving on its own. Sorry, I'm rendering right now, so I'm lagging maybe a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do here is select a joint, and I'm going to select this regular joint chain here. I'm going to select everything down to, but not the end joint, but everything but the end joint, and I'm going to do that for all my legs. So if I look at the IK chain here, the spring chain here, I could say, let's have a look here. So I call all of them high joints. Since I'm really reluctant to not use scripting in this course, since I don't really want to start introducing you guys to a lot of scripting. So I promise that you wouldn't need to do scripting in order to understand this course. So I'm just going to select everything manually to start with. Normally I would just select everything by scripting, but basically what I'm doing is just selecting all the joints, and for now we're selecting all the leg joints except for the spring solvers. So now you can see I have all of those selected, and the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to say modify search and replace name, and then I'm just going to search and replace for underscore JNT and replace that with underscore skin JNT. And you can see immediately all of these are now named skinning, and that's really smart, because now if I want to select anything with skinning, I can just say asterisk skin asterisk JNT, and it says no object matches name, which is because I'm missing an asterisk here, and there you go. So now it's selected all my skin joints. So I can see here I accidentally selected my end joints as well. I think that's because when I renamed, and this is pretty important, that you don't have it when you want to tag your skin joint, that you don't have it on hierarchy. So if I go a little bit back here, so you can see I didn't actually have them selected, but because I have hierarchy selected, it's obviously gonna select the whole hierarchy. So I'm just gonna go with selected here and here, and then you can see like now it's not tagging the end joints. So continuing, and there's a couple of things that I want to say. I'm not gonna go too much into skinning in this course, or into any details about skinning or how to pick your joints, but there are a few things that I want you guys to know. So first off, I don't skin to my FK chains as long as I have an IK chain underlying. So in this case, I have my IK chain here, so I'm just going to select everything in that IK chain except for the end joints, and then we're going to rename that as well. Let's tag those, and we're going to do the same thing for the neck. So if you haven't really bothered to upgrade your neck to be IKs, that's totally fine. You will just skin to your FKs instead then. So rename those to be called, to your FK joints to be called underscore skin. And here I'm just gonna take the eye case for the neck here, and except for the, I don't take the end joint because, and this is important. So here I have the, actually here I have the head joint, and in this case it wouldn't really matter, but very important is that you don't select two joints that are lying on top of each other in Maya. At least not if you go by standard. You can go by something that's called tagging, where you label a joint and tell it what kind of joint it is. We're not going to do that here, so you can tell if it's hip knee, then it'll actually know the difference. But Maya, basically when we want to mirror our skinning, doesn't know if we have two joints on top of each other which joint to actually mirror the skinning to. So that's why I don't want to select two joints that are on top of each other, because we're gonna experience that we cannot mirror later on unless we get like major mistakes, and that's really not desired. So we're gonna create something really simple. So I'm gonna say let's select the eye roots here, so the eye AJAs and the jaw AJA, and let's get the head AJA, and that's that. And let's tag those. So modify system replace names, tag those. So now we got the spine, the tail, we got the arm, the legs, the neck, and that's basically it for tagging them. So let's try and go now and say asterisk skin JNT and check that we have something in all areas. And I can see we didn't have the spine, so let's quickly tag a spine. Let's select that. So we go into the spine here and we select all of these, and then we say skin that, and let's say modify search and replace name skin, and get that name in there. So now if I go in and say asterisk skin asterisk JNT, I could actually just say asterisk skin asterisk, but I'm just making sure that I'm having only the joints selected. And then I'm going to select my character, my geometry, and I'm going to say skin, and I'm going to go into smooth bind. So the first thing I'm going to do here is just reset selections. This is not a lecture on skinning, because skinning is a major important thing about rigging, and you can probably spend even more time skinning than you can on actually doing the rigging, because normally in a production pipeline you would have a rig already optimized, so you'd click maybe one or two buttons after you place your joints, and then you would hit skinning, and then you would spend the majority of your time skinning or adding muscle systems and muscle deformation, painting muscles, weights. If it's a realistic pipeline, if it's a game pipeline, you'll probably spend your time on just skinning. And I can see here before I hit skinning I actually want to take these joints, and in this case because it's for the scapulas, I forgot to tag these two joints, and we already have a joint here in this exact position where we have skinning on, and that's why I don't want to skin to this object, and I don't want to skin to this one either, because that's just our rotation pivot for that. So I am going to skin to the end joint of the scapula. That's why I didn't call it AJ end. So if I select those two and just say modify search and replace name, tag that as skin, reselect all those again, and then we're just going to select the mesh, smooth bind, not joint hierarchy. That's important, because if we select joint hierarchy now, it's basically going to select all our end joints, everything, and skin to all of that, and that's definitely not what we want. One thing to mention that's important, the reason why I said that I would change it into a game hierarchy, is that game hierarchies have to be in one big bone structure. But when you're making something for a film, or something like we're doing where we're just practicing, it is basically for a film, but for a simple film, then we don't need to have anything in one hierarchy. So let's just go for selected joints, and let's make sure that we have interactive on, and we can go for a max influence of 5. So this max influence, sometimes and most of the time, it's actually important to keep it on pretty low. So 5 is fine. You can go for 10 as well. So basically what that means is that one vertice on your character can only be influenced by 5 joints, and it means that your skinning is not suddenly going to flow around somewhere. and the drop off rate is obviously the drop off in units. So let's try and just make sure that we reset the settings as we did before and set this one to selected joints, and then the rest of it should be fine. And then we hit skin, and now we're just gonna try and save this, and let's see if everything's gonna blown up. So I'm gonna call this under the combine module, kind of call it point 2, because we're still like trying to just set up the basics. So I'm not gonna do any particularly good skinning right now. I'm just gonna show you how I'm prepping it for skinning. And then I'm gonna go down here and I'm gonna select the teeth. So in this case the teeth are combined, that's okay. But in this case we only need 2 joints, because we only either needed to follow the jaw or we needed to follow the head. So I'm just gonna select those 2 joints and say skin, bind, skin, smooth bind, select the joints, that's okay. And I'm gonna select this eye joint here, and I'm gonna select the eyeball and hit G, because then I'm repeating the skinning. So you can see now that if I start moving this controller around, oh, so what you can see here is I actually skinned my head to my eye bone, because I want to skin just with a very low influence around my eye, so I can get a little bit of like just fake some fleshy, because we're not going to do any facial stuff, but I want to fake a fleshy eye. But you can see like my eye is rotating around. That should be fine enough for now. And then let's just make sure that if I select this joint and this eye and hit G to repeat the skinning process, move around, the eye is moving, that's perfect. And if I move the jaw, so you can see that the skinning is pretty messed up right now, but we'll fix that. And just because we don't have a tongue rig yet, but I wanted to follow along, I'm just going to select the tongue and hit on the jaw joint and hit G again. And for some reason I lost that action, so let's just select the 2 and so say smooth bind. And you just got a snippet of my other character that I'm currently updating. So let's see here. So if we move this one around, you can see we have a lot of weird influence here. That's okay, we're gonna paint it anyways, but as you can see we're starting to get some movement. And like I think like for me personally, this is one of the most satisfying parts of like rigging, is when you can really start to see your character come to life, and you get to see like all this cool stuff that you've been trying to set up and you've been struggling, and now it all pays off because an animator is going to go in and make it move really cool. And you can see like with a fairly simple rigging we're going to get like all this cool movement, where we can have like some movement on the clavicles. Obviously there's way too much influence here, but as I said, like this is about the rigging, it's not about the skinning. So I'm going to create a separate lecture about skinning. It's probably going to be in a whole different lecture setup, but you can check that out on the website as soon as it's ready. For those of you who signed up for the mailing system, I'll let you know when as soon as there is one. And the rest of you just gotta follow the Vimeo channel on my website. But I do recommend that you just throw in your mail, because I can keep you up to date. So right now we just wanna quickly select all these toes here and just skin them to let's make sure that it's the joints that are called skin joint. So if we hit smooth bind, oh, that's annoying that we have to see that guy every time, but okay. You've seen him anyways on the website maybe. And let's hit skin on that, and let's hit skin on this one as well. So now when I move my foot here, there's a good movement there. I don't know what that was. Let's see. I think there's just some lost geo. So let's see if this one is following along. Is this one following along? Great. So if I select my global controller here and move him out, so we're actually missing all of these. There is a trick to make these follow along, but for now I'm just gonna hit select all my skin joints and just basically skin them to the same, just to so I know that everything is sort of bound up. And there we go. So you can see I'm lagging quite a bit. It's not because the rig is slow. This rig is really light. It's just because I'm rendering in the background. So that's actually what I wanted to show in this prepping lecture, where I just like tagged all my joints with skinning. So this is it for the how to basically make the rigging process, and then I'm gonna make a new tutorial that's gonna be like maybe 2 or 3 parts where I'm just gonna talk about skinning and give you guys an introduction to how I would go on about skinning and how my basic approach and workflow and what I usually do when I start out, and if like there's a lot of good tricks for skinning, right? So you can see here everything is starting to look really sweet. Yeah, and anyway, so this was the part 2 of the combine. I call this the combining because I just basically finished up the last part of the character. And let's try and just move the head here and see if we got something here. So I can start to see some good movement there. If I take the IK controller, just make sure that when you're moving your controllers around here, you're resetting them again so you don't get lost. And I'm still tempted to probably, you can see like there's a lot of skinning that needs to be fixed here, but especially on the head, because he kind of loses a lot of volume here. But I think also I'm gonna set up the squash and stretch for the neck. I still haven't done that, but hopefully you guys have done that. If you haven't, that's fine, but it's recommended. And let's try and move this. It's probably gonna look really funky because his whole face is skinned to the eye joints, but you get the point. And brilliant, we got everything in one joint hierarchy. Everything is great. So basically, there's a few things that I want to do here to prep up. But for now, I think we're great. One thing we could do though is hit or make an attribute that's gonna basically turn this one on off, so we can decide not to see our mechanics anymore. And I'm quickly gonna select my global controller and I'm going to say add attribute, and let's just say like make this and go down to 0 and 1, just add that. And let's do the same thing for control this 0 and 1. And the last thing I'm going to do is add a geo this 0 and 1. And then just to add a display menu, so let's say visibility control and make that displayable, and then we just lock that controller. And then as we've done before, we're going to delete these attributes after we created them, and then undo that action to get them into the hierarchy again, or into this, underneath this visibility control. One moment. So 17 minutes. So right now there's a few things that I want to do in order to finalizing our preparations, and that's basically locking my channels. So you don't want to have channels open that your animators are not going to be using. And we've been on the way closing some of our channels, but we can definitely clean up a little bit more. But for now, quickly, we just want to hook up these 3 controllers that we've been creating. So I'm gonna hit save here, and then I'm just gonna start selecting these. Let me try and select the mechanical group and the control group and the geo group, and then I'm gonna go into general and connection editor. And then I'm going to take my geometry visibility and hook that into my geometry vis, and my control visibility into my visibility here, mechanical visibility into my mechanical visibility. And if I select this one here and then I hit all these ones on, I have a bit more control of what I'm seeing. So let's try and save that. And then what we're going to do now is lock the channels that we're not going to use. So on these controllers we only need the translation, we don't need rotation. So let's start by selecting these and make sure we get all that rotation value locked and hidden. And on this one we need the translation and rotation, that's good. And we need the translation and rotation on this one as well. We can see the stretch factor. These are my, so FKs, we don't need to see our translate values because we're only rotating FKs, right? So lock and hide that. And on the IKs, we can use the translate and the rotate. We can use the translate and rotate on this one as well. We got a stretch factor that we haven't set up yet, but I'm going to keep this because I'm going to set that up in a moment. The head should be able to rotate and translate, so that's fine. The jaw should be able to just rotate, so let's remove that translate. Let's lock and hide that. And let's check these controllers. So we have rotation. Oh, see there. That's good. So let's make sure that we don't have these rotations here. And that actually might affect the way that we're skinning, because if I have actually had my controllers in a position while I added the skinning the first time, that skinning is inaccurate. It needs to be, the skinning needs to be applied once your character is in neutral pose. So I might just, since I've just blocked out my skinning, I'm not going to change that now, but once we start doing the real skinning, I'm going to unbind this character and start over. So basically right now I should probably just, you can even check it if I go to the skin cluster here and I say take that off. You can see I actually did have that rotation there. So right now what I need to do, don't delete your skin cluster, you have to unbind your skin. So skin, unbind that, deattach skin. So right now we can see like it's zeroed out, so I'm just gonna quickly hit skin here, get all those joints. Oh, something went wrong here. So let's go here and up here and say skin. Oh, let's go JNT. Great. And then select the character again. Smooth bind. Select the joints. Great. Super. And then let's continue locking our channels here. So if we select the IK controller here, we want to be able to rotate and translate this one, because we can see that gives us quite a lot of movement that we want. But maybe on the FKs we don't really need this. But technically on this tail we can actually use that FK if we want to. And that's because we have our IK parented underneath the FK. So I can actually get that secondary movement here. So that's why I'm gonna leave these open on the tail. But that's only because I have an actual IK controller parented underneath my FK controller. Else normally I would never do that. But this can give a secondary motion to our animator, so we don't really mind that. So let's keep the translation under these. Same thing for this one, and good for this one. You can see how this tail is really gonna look, that's gonna look rad as soon as we get that movement correctly, right? Our animators really have a lot of freedom to also use both the IKs and the FKs. So let's check the pole vectors. That's usually where we forget it. So that's good. We only have translation open here. We only need translation on our pole vectors. And I think we actually locked all our channels here. So let's lock the scale on this one and the visibility, since we don't want to be able to hide and unhide this controller, and on this one as well. So we're not going to concern ourselves with global scale in this lecture, because it's a little bit more of an advanced topic, and well, it's not really super advanced, but I don't want to go into more, because we need to manipulate the spine curves that we've been squashing, stretching and multiplying, and we need to multiply that with the scale factor. And since I don't really want to go into that, we're not gonna set that up for this course unless a lot of people really ask for it. So if you really want to know how to make a global scale on splines, then let me know. But for now, let's just keep it out. But yeah, that's basically the combining and setting up the basic adding the skinning without actually doing any skinning work, but prepping our character for skinning. So what we got left to do now is proper skinning and manipulating our controllers to be a little bit more intuitive looking. But besides that, we're almost there. So very well done, guys, and I hope you're hanging in there, and please let me know if you got any questions. Remember to sign up on the website so I can keep you guys up to date on new lectures. Yeah, I'll see you in the next lecture.